Okay, hello and welcome everybody to another version of Personal Board of Directors. So I'm delighted to be joined by two great friends and people I really admire, Gibson Biddle and Melissa Perri, who are here to share, our stories about what we've been doing with our lives over the last 6 months. So, at the end of last year, Gib, who has often talked about this notion of a personal board of directors that he uses to hold himself accountable, challenge himself, give him a bit of direction about what he's doing in his life. And we were sharing, and he put this idea of why not do this in the open? Why not sort of share everything we're learning with people? And it was uncomfortable, it was crazy, so obviously we said yes. And it went really well. People really enjoyed it. We got tons of great feedback, and people just saying it was really helpful to inspire them. And so we were sort of coming towards the 6-month mark. And we're like, you know what? Who else should be on this? Both of us said Melissa Perri straight away. So luckily, here's Melissa, who we've managed to sort of suck into this sort of story to share. But all of what we've been working on, what we're learning, really to help each other and hopefully inspire folks out there that you can do the same too. And already we can see lots of people saying hello in chats. Adam, David, Kilimji. Tom in London, already tons of people on the stream. Do drop your questions in as we're going along. This is very much designed to be sort of in the open. We're going to spend a little bit of time just introducing ourselves so people know who we are if they haven't met us. Gib has loads of fun models. One of the ones he uses for coaching is called Camp, and so we're going to do that on each one of ourselves. And then at the end, we're going to leave loads of time for questions and to try and respond to as many as you can. So do keep dropping them in the thread as we're going. We will be watching them. We will try and pick them up in situ and definitely make lots of time at the end. All right, so without further ado, Gibson Biddle, why don't you introduce yourself to the people listening and tell them a little bit about what your sort of mission is at the moment.
Sure, thanks, Barry. My name is Gib. And for the last 5 years, I've been focused on teaching and writing, and mainly trying to help product leaders all over the world. I do lots of talks, workshops, exec events. And the last year, I've been doing some more writing. I'm actually the newbie in this crowd of 3. I reached out to both of them for my personal board of directors because they were both doing what I wanted to do. So both peeps here are writers and speakers, and 4 or 5 years ago, I didn't do any of it. So thanks in advance and ongoing, Barry and Melissa, for your help.
Awesome. All right. It's always been a pleasure. I think I've always learned as much as hopefully I've been able to share, Gib, so appreciate that. But Melissa, what about you? Give us a quick breakdown of what you're currently focused on.
Yeah. So for the last 6 months, I guess for a long time, I've been focused on teaching. But last year, I started to get, well, really it was like cut and dry in the new year. I started to get away from more of the deeper consulting engagements I've been doing over the last, 6 years before that, and focusing more on teaching. So now I'm doing primarily teaching through Harvard Business School. I'm in the middle of a rewrite for a product management 101 class in the fall, which I fully regret that I decided to rewrite. Sounded really good at the time, but now that I actually have to do it, it's a lot harder. But that's what I'm doing this month and have been doing for the last, couple months. And I teach PM 101 and 102 in the business school, second years. And then I also teach our online school, Product Institute. So I've been spending a lot more of my time there, developing new classes, trying to figure out better ways to scale product management training to basically everybody. So it's all an online school. And then recently I also started a CPO accelerator. So I've been working with director, product VPs of product and above who want to become executives. So it's for very experienced product leaders who are now like, okay, how do I actually operate as an executive? How do I work with boards? How do I work with my CEO? How do I set portfolio level product strategy? So I've been doing that a lot, and there's a lot more of a community component to it too. So it's been really fun to meet so many product leaders from all over. So a lot of teaching. in addition to that, I've been remodeling a house, and that has been awful. So I know, just moved in, so get ready for the house stuff. Are you doing anything? Gib, are you doing any like remodels with it or any construction, or you just got a first?
As little as possible.
That's what I would do from now on. This sounded like a great idea. And now everybody's joking that my next book should be for contractors on how to do project management. And I'm like, they need it.
Well, I think following your Instagram feed has been one of the reminders constantly me for what great can look like, but what it takes to get there. So it's been pretty fun to enjoy the trials and tribulations of what you've been doing there in Carolina. So all good. And then, so for folks who don't know me, my name is Barry O'Reilly, and I've had a mixture of being a business advisor, coaching executives, primarily from large Fortune 500 companies about how to create high-performance organizations. I run a program called Exec Camp. And most recently, probably the fun sort of shift from December is I've recently started a venture studio called Nobody Studios. And our mission is to launch 100 companies in the next 5 years. It's a pretty ridiculous ambition. It's very exciting. I'm learning lots about venturing, investment, raising money, finding teams, sourcing talent. It's been a pretty interesting experience, but I'm sure we're going to share lots more of these little tidbits as we go along, what we're learning. So with that, let's dive into the camp model, right? And this is, if anyone hangs out with Gib, he just has fun, quirky names for things, I think, to help you remember them. He's a million of these, so go look at his Medium blogs or his newsletters, and you're going to find tons of stuff like this. But the notion of the camp model is it's got 4 sort of aspects. It talks about connection, so your relationship with your boss, your team, individuals in your company. Autonomy, your ability to sort of self-direct, or to feel like you're not an order taker, which is always a fun one to debate. Mastery, your ability to learn and grow in your job and get better. And purpose, right? The feeling that the work you do matters, or helping to make a dent in the universe, as we like to say. So the approach is to give ourselves a sliding score from 0 to 10, with 10 being absolutely awesome and 0 being, oh my word, there's a lot of work to do here. All right, so Gib, let's kick off with you, and we can sort of self-medicate some of your own models on yourself. All right, so number 1, community connection. How'd you score yourself in the last 6 months?
Yeah, let me just start with the highest level, which is on a scale of 0 to 10, where 0 sucks and 10 is awesome. What's your overall score, Gib? So mine is an 8 or a 9, which is super healthy. To answer your question, Barry, on community, I gave it an 8. I have found a lot of connection with people all around the world, including the 2 of you. Really shocking to me, because I worked full-time at companies until about 5 years ago. And so losing that connection with colleagues, it's just different for me. I give that an 8. Autonomy, that's, I obviously am setting my own path in the work that I do, and largely focused on talks, workshops, exec events, and writing. I gave it an 8 and not higher, because I'm trying to do a very, very hard thing, which is to balance my work and my life. So we have bought a new house in Bend, Oregon, trying to spend 50-50 here in Bend and the other half in Burlingame. My wife works about 16 hours a day. She's crazy. So I'm required to do all that, we call it life maintenance. So I pay taxes and do renovations and buy furniture. And so that's just hard. It's not work I really enjoy, but it's because my goal state is to work 50% of the time, in the way that my wife and I divide and conquer, that I take on all that stuff. Mastery, that's new learning. If you watched us last time, there were two or three challenges I was faced. One was, how the heck do I collect email addresses? And so I started my Ask Gib product newsletter on Substack, and that's been really fun. So I've been learning a lot of new skills, learning about the commitment to write something every week. I've collected 6,000 emails, so I feel really successful in that. that's been fun. The other challenge I was supposed to take on was make my baby website better, and I failed to do that.
Yeah, good. I was looking forward to this one. Yeah.
Yeah. And then on purpose, my purpose is largely about teaching, coaching in a leveraged way all over the world. And that's where I actually think I'm doing a pretty good job with the product newsletter. 3,000 people read, what I write every week. So that's good. The other thing to put on my guilt list, Barry, is my damn book. Both of you damn book. Carefully, you'll notice I've almost written a damn book on Medium, my series, How to Define Your Product Strategy. I found some two pals, some ghosts who have offered to turn it into a real book. So we'll see if I have the discipline in the next 6 months to actually handle that. So that was me, 8, 8, 8, and 8, with an overall score of 8 or 9. And it's my biggest challenge. I'm sort of an all or nothing person. And so it's hard to be in between with that life work balance.
Yeah, right. Let's probe you a little bit on this one, Gabe, right? Because I think one of the things you are, I think you've got great discipline on things, right? Like the ability to write every week. Like me and Melissa probably just sit there, like I start getting anxious thinking be able to write.
I know. I'm like, God, Gib has just put out so many articles, and I don't even want to open a document and look at it.
Yeah, so let's kudos there, right? So that, and writing a book, great. Okay, I think that's always one that sort of sits on your shoulder and haunts you. But I really like this notion of like how you're balancing your time to do things that you actually really enjoy, right? You talk about creative pursuit a lot, but for you, that isn't necessarily just like building products or teaching people how to build products, right? You also invest a lot in your own life, your health, your managing, and then you're managing home and transitions as well, right? And I think that's always interesting for people to hear a little bit about how you sort of strike that balance, because some of that work, as you say, is not so enjoyable, right? Like going through and doing all the bills and doing the account, like it's work to be done, but it's not as enjoyable for you. Like people have a different version of that in their work. I certainly do. So I just love you to elaborate a little bit more on how you balance those things and some of the systems and the mechanisms, because you literally measure everything almost, it feels like. So give people a little glimpse into that.
Yeah, so these are almost kind of life hacks. So I am very data and metric oriented. So I do have a revenue goal each year, and that helps me to decide if I'm going to say yes or no to different things. But really, because of COVID, everything went virtual and I could just do more. So I sort of I was halfway through my revenue goal by the end of like March. It was kind of crazy. So then I'm like, okay, don't work too much, Gib. I try to ski my age in days every winter, and I'm 59. I just skied 41 days 2 days ago. It was actually COVID that kept me from skiing more, and that's really why I worked more, through March and April. I try to ski half of my age. I'd rather backpack half of my age with my wife, Kristen. So we do a lot of backpacking. So just having, basically having metrics around these other things is good. Actually, I thought of one thing that might be relevant to both of you. I had done an experiment a year ago on Teachable that I thought was a failed experiment. I put my product strategy course there. Yeah. And then guess what? With the product newsletter, every time I write an essay, there's a link to my Teachable course. And every week, people are clicking on it. And so I now have, it's called passive income. And my joke is passive income doesn't exist. I mean, you have to be very active to make stuff happen. But I was really shocked that I actually got a sponsor for my newsletter as well. So it's mainly, to an extent, we're all solopreneurs, right? And we're all hacking our career. We're choosing not to get direct deposit and work for the same company all the time. But I was just fascinated. I'm always fascinated by how many people and how easy it is to have non-traditional careers. And really, you hear about the creator economy and creators. It's really because all these tools exist, like Twitter or LinkedIn or Medium or Substack. It's really been amazing. Anyways, back to the life work balance. Occasionally I go into a funk, like, oh my God, I have to write another newsletter. And then I'm trying to keep pace with Lenny's newsletter, or Not Boring. It's Packy. These are full-time pros now, just doing sponsored and paid newsletter. I'm like, I'm not them. Like, stop, Gib. And I just sort of give myself permission occasionally not to do it all. And that phrase goes through my head every day. Like, okay, Gib, you don't have to do it all. It's okay to go ski today, and the newsletter can wait till next week. So it's just sort of giving myself that freedom, which, I feel like I have earned. I've worked full-time direct deposit for 30 years. And I've really been having a lot of fun the last 5 years.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Like, I'm sure Melissa's going to have lots to talk about in terms of the building up the online work. Right? She's obviously built a business around that. I definitely find it fascinating to give ourselves space and a break and focus on other things. Like when I hear you talk about like the natural competitive streak or the natural, I've got to do more. Oh, someone's done more. I got to do more as well. And it's very easy to get on that treadmill and never get off it. In many ways, like that's one of the things I've really had to work on hard, is to like make space for all the things, not just work. But yeah, it's interesting to hear you share that too as well. Melissa, what about you? What are some of your thoughts?
I'm bad at like scoring this because it's my first time doing this, but I guess I'll go into it. Yeah, I think like what Gib was saying about like balancing the life and stuff really resonated with me. It sounds like you have some good discipline about that too, Gib, with like your backpacking and your skiing. You're like, I'm going to physically take myself out of work to go do things that like I can't actually work while I'm doing, which is a really good discipline I do not have. But I like that about how you've kind of set up your life. I think that's like really important. I think I suffer a lot from it too, from that, like what Barry was talking about, like the competitive, oh my God, I got to go do something else. And I've been really, really bad at taking breaks. I've been consulting since 2014. And at first it was a hustle to like make sure I could feed myself, which was very scary. And like, I never actually thought I would consult. It just started paying the bills, and I was like, okay. And I couldn't find a company that really wanted to like actually do product management. So that's why I never joined one after that. I was like, I'll go teach people how to do it instead. But the deeper I got into the consulting, the more I found it being like a super rat race. And it has been incredibly hard to recharge. Adam just wrote that comment too. How are you all taking time to recharge and build that energy reserve? I'll be like completely honest. I hit a burnout last year, really bad, really, really bad. I'm still not fully over it. I think I'm still very burnt out, which is why I personally pulled back from a lot of stuff. So I think like, I'll talk about it more in my section, but I think it's smart that you're thinking of all those things now, Gib, because it's like I know we've talked about this, like you went into this as I don't really want to fully retire. I'm going to do some cool stuff and still do some fun things. Right. But you're not, it's easy to get like really wrapped up into it and think about like, how do I just keep pushing and pushing and pushing? So I think thinking about that now and recognizing it, you've got a good balance going on there.
Yeah. Melissa, in a moment, I'm going to shift gears and I'll work you through the model. Adam, to answer your question, my recharge, I do take breaks, as Melissa pointed out, where I'll just be off the grid. It often could be a week every month or two. And then I tend to exercise 1 or 2 hours a day. And that makes all the difference for me. I get really grumpy and grouchy if I don't. And then to your question, Tom, on writing, the way I began is I actually started talking. I'm a much better speaker than a writer. And I just talked about stuff that I was passionate about. And then it sort of let me work out what I wanted to write about. and then shifted gears to writing. But my only coaching is, you have a couple of secrets, things that you're really passionate about that really strike your interest. Start there. And then the idea of real discipline, it doesn't exist. Just find the things you're passionate and just frickin' start writing. I started on Medium, and in my first thing, I had like 12 people look over my essay. It took me 3 weeks to hit the frickin' publish button. Now I write an essay, I hit the publish button. I do draft it 10 times on my own. And so that's the real discipline. Okay, Melissa, on a scale of 0 to 10, where 0 sucks and 10 is awesome, what's the quality of your job and your career right now?
Like a overall, or just going through the
overall.
camera?
Overall.
Probably give it a, job wise, maybe a 6 or a 7.
Okay.
I think that's more because I probably a 7. I'll say a 7 right now.
Okay. Yeah. And just so you know, when I'm working with folks, I love for them to be an 8. It's great. And 6 or 7, you can usually get people into the 8 range by focusing on some things. And I get really anxious with folks that are 0 to 5, especially for a sustained period. Okay. So then on community and connection, what's your score there? 0 to 10?
That I put a 5 at for the last 6 months. I used to be really good at this. But I did mention, like, I burnt out hard. I've pulled back from many things to protect myself. And that's why I gave it a 5 recently. Like, if I just look at the last 6 months snapshot, haven't been doing as many community events, haven't been talking to as many people. It was more from like a personal life thing. I was mentioning to you guys before this, I had been consulting for a really long time, and I got really deep into a lot of these companies. But as I started scaling our consulting, I realized that my role became 24/7 sales. And I don't want to be a salesperson. I want to be a product person. I've never wanted to be a salesperson. That's a hard job. And it was growing and it was growing. And I looked at it and I was like, I could theoretically keep going with this, but I wasn't happy. I was so tired, so burnt out. It just felt like I was really, really worried about letting everybody down. And that kind of gets into the autonomy part second. But because of that feeling of burnout, I have not been quite as into the community as I typically am. I also think COVID was a part of that too. I used to go to 10, 12 conferences a year. I love going to conferences because that was my way to like chat with people over dinner and like learn about what they're doing. And I've had some good conversations with a couple people around that, but I feel like I'm just not in it as much with the broader community. But I do have to like be careful and like take a step back. And I realize like joining Harvard, I see all the people looking for jobs. So I've been, it's interesting because I've been on the front end of people like looking for product jobs then with my MBA students, like going out to do that. So I've been really in tune with what they're doing. That's a huge amount of my time. Been talking to a lot of companies about what their issues are, but I'm interested. Like, I want to know like what's next, what's like what else is going on, right? Like, I feel like with the consulting that I've done over the last 4 years, I got like really deep into a lot of what the problems are, but then I pulled back pretty hard when and now I'm in this phase of like, okay, what do I do with all the things that I learned? And that's what I'm kind of trying to figure out next. Got it.
So on the mastery list, I mean, in the last year, do you feel good about developing some new skills or learning some new stuff?
Yeah. I mean, if I have to look about the last year or two, okay. So let me say for autonomy, I put a 6. And then I'll go over these real fast. Mastery, I put an 8. Purpose, I put an 8. Autonomy, I put a 6 because of, I don't have full autonomy anymore because now I do work for Harvard. So yeah, like I have to go to Boston. I am in South Carolina right now. I just got an apartment in Boston and I will be up there for the school year. And I'm looking forward to being back in person because I missed that. But that's another community thing. I joined Harvard during COVID. I did not meet anybody up there. It's kind of like, I have some really great people who like, a couple people, like 3 people who like shepherd me into that, but I have no idea like what's going on campus. And I've been like really, really out of the loop. It feels like, and I joined Harvard because I wanted to meet new people and like hear, learn from the other professors too. There's a lot of stuff I don't know. And I thought it was interesting because it's a group of people who are not just focused on product. And I have been really deep in the product world. So I'm curious to hear about like all the different things that are going on in business conversations. But we've been all remote for a year. So I kind of missed out on that. I haven't had that going on as well. So that's been hard. I'm looking forward to like going back to campus to be around everybody, see my students in person. I way prefer to teach at Harvard in person because the case method that we do and all the other styles, it's really different. And my students, I was in person for like 3 classes. I could be like, what's going on? You seem down today. And like, you can't see that on Zoom. Like you can't see what people are going through. So look forward to that. But yeah, the autonomy, I lose the autonomy by doing that. I gained some of the autonomy back when we stopped consulting last year because I have been focusing on, I've been getting away from the sales. So I've been having some more brain space to think about what else we're doing. So I started our podcast, Product Thinking, and I love that. I found that because I was so burnt out, I had a really hard time writing, but I don't have a hard time talking. So that's why I started to move towards podcasting, because I would sit there and like obsess, like you talked about with your first article. I was obsessed about what I was writing and I was just too tired to do it. And the podcast is like, I have to be on, like, I have to talk to both of you on it. I was like, I got it on my calendar. I got to talk to Gibson Biddle. And the Dear Melissa ones are great because then I can actually see what people are asking about and what questions people have. So I'm like, oh, this is great. This is what people want to learn about. And it's easy to respond to them. So that's been easy. But I'm thinking about also like getting back into writing eventually. There's another book that I'm discussing doing with my friend. And we'll see if that manifests, but I've been a little tired. So the autonomy piece is getting better. It's not, but yeah, I definitely lose it by.
So Melissa, what would your number be? What would your number be for purpose? I mean, I assume as a teacher, you're trying to 8. Okay. So
yeah, 8 or 9. Yeah, I'd actually put that 9. I'm going to put that as a 9.
That's awesome. By the way, I taught at Stanford and I stopped largely because of what you said. I was required to be in Palo Alto every fall. And I like having more flexibility than that.
Yeah.
So anyway, the other thing listening to you is give yourself a break, right? I mean, COVID was we're barely coming off of it now. And that made sucky life for everybody. Barry was one of them with young kids underfoot and incredibly unreliable daycare, et cetera. So anyways, listening to you, Melissa, the hope is that 6 months from now that the autonomy score will bump back and then your overall rating will be somewhere between 8 or 9. Is there something that we can help hold you to in order to sort of improve your autonomy over the next 6 months? Anything you want us to do to help discipline you?
Not taking on more than I need to. This has been my big issue forever. I say yes to a lot of things and I've been better at saying no. And if I do say no to you, I'm sorry, but I am trying to not work 80 hours a week like I have been for the last 6 years. I'm trying to like recover from a burnout. But I have always been the person where I'm like, well, I could just like squeeze that in. And I'm trying very disciplined to say no to that. And to kind of protect my time. So that my biggest thing is like that. And this is the reason why I'm doing all the things I do right now. Like I'm trying, and this goes back to purpose. The reason I put purpose 9, I finally feel like the things that I do now, like I've got the podcast, I've got the CPO Accelerator for our product leaders. I've got Product Institute, I've got Harvard, and I've got, more like the writing focuses and stuff like this. Like it's scalable and consulting's not scalable. And I decided that I'm going to go deep on only things that I could feel like I have a really big impact on. So I just joined the board of a company because it's a SaaS company that it's a software company that I really believe in. I can go deep and I can have an impact there. But with some of the consulting that we're doing, I hoped I could have an impact, but I know realistically that it's going to take years for some of these things to do. It's like moving a big, giant Titanic. So I'm trying to do everything that's super scalable. And that's why I feel like the purpose is up at a 9. And I would not have called it that probably this time last year. And I feel like I can make a bigger impact by doing that than I can by just working with individual companies.
So how do you decide what to say yes or no to, Melissa? I mean, listening to you, you say yes to the things that add to your energy and no to the things you don't. But it sounds like you have a really hard time saying no, period. So how do you decide what to say yes or no to?
So now my framework is a little bit like, will it help the things that I'm currently doing? So like, will it help CPO Accelerator? Will it help Product Institute? And I have very specific goals there, right? Like for Product Institute, I think a lot about, like you were talking about how nobody bought the Teachable course originally, right? We sell Product Institute usually to large companies, but I know that a lot of people don't know I have an online school, and I've had it since 2016. So I look at what can help me like get the word out, or what can help me with the sales part. Because like I said, I don't want to do sales, but I will do it when I have to for that, obviously. So I look at like everything as, what do we need for this? Like how does it improve that community? So I'm like, okay, can it help me with CPO Accelerator? Can it make some of this community aspect better? I get a lot of energy from that because I love working with the product leaders. And we actually had, this made me feel like, okay, everything is worth it last week, because we had one person who went through it in January. She had just gone through a big merger. She was a VP of product and she didn't want to get pushed out for the CPO role. And they gave her the CPO role, and like she earned it because she like really kicked ass and like went after it. But she said, she was like, this made all the difference. Like this program made all the difference. I never would have been able to do this without it. And I was like, I think you probably would have been able to figure it out, but like, it made me feel really good to hear that. So I'm like, okay, that's what I need, like impact, right, on it. So I look at that. And then for the other requests, it's been kind of like, so it has been, and this is what I need to get away from. Oh, that doesn't sound like a lot of time, right? And I will do things, I'll say, like we were just talking about this, Gib, like I don't do things that don't pay anymore. And it's just like, it's just from a perspective of, I really have limited time. Like I mentioned, I really am trying to find time for my personal life too, to just like recover and go on. I'm bad at taking vacations, and I'm trying to do that. And if I say yes to everything, I won't be able to do that. So I also do look at it like, does this pay from a perspective of, you know, can it help fuel one of the businesses that we're doing? I use that money to pay a small team to build all the stuff that we do. So obviously, like I do look at that. If it doesn't, I'm like, it has to have something that has a lot of meaning attached to it to go back into the other things that we're doing. So that's kind of what I've been looking at. Like, does it align with our purpose and what we're doing? Is it scalable is another one. I'm trying not to take on anything that's not scalable. I think it's easy to get into that.
Yeah, that concept for me, I just call it leverage. Barry, would you like to ask Melissa some questions, or would you like to turn the tables and Melissa can help take you through the model? It's your choice.
What do you think, Melissa? Do you think you can turn me around? What do you reckon?
Turn you around? I don't think you need to turn anywhere, Barry. Like, you're killing it. Let's see. Let's go through. I'm looking at your notes from last time. I wasn't here. So we've got the CAMP model. I'll try to walk you through. So first one is connection.
Hang on a sec. I want to hear Barry's top line number.
Overall score.
Oh, yeah. So top line
overall
scores. Always forget this. All right. So last time I was a 6 for numerous reasons of tripping over rugrats and all sorts of things. All right. I actually think I'm an 8 as well at the moment.
Oh my God, this is awesome. Okay. So my theory is it was freaking COVID. Get rid of COVID and things got better. Is that true, Barry?
Yeah, well, you know, like it's been a mix of things, right? Like there's no doubt. You know, my kids are 3 and 1. You know, like they are right in it at the moment. So balancing that, you know, my wife works in pandemic planning for the World Health Organization as well. So she's a busy lady, right? And trying to help her, you know, do what needs to be done in that space is pretty important. So, you know, it's a grind. But I think, you know, so we'll probably talk a little bit about, I'm actually doing something that is lighting me up at the moment. And while my own business was lighting me up, and this is like really lighting me up. And I feel like it's that's sort of what's getting me to an 8 at the moment. So yeah, I didn't think I would have said that 6 months ago. So here we are.
Oh no, I'm very excited for you. Okay, do your thing, Melissa.
Okay. So now I'll go through the first one. So connection. How do you feel about your relationship with the community? Would you rate it?
Yeah, so this one, I normally don't like scoring a 7, but because I think it's sort of like a meh score, right?
Yeah.
But I'm actually going to give myself a 7 on this one. One, because I think I'm actually meeting a whole new group of people, but right, both who are I'm working with in Nobody Studios, who are like, I know nobody who I literally before I started working with them, and it's early days, but when you meet new people, they challenge you in different ways, and that's been fascinating, right? And so that is kind of fun for me, and yeah, so I'm going to give myself a 7 on that one.
Good, I like that. So with the what do you feel like you could be doing more to get to an 8?
Well, like this, I think when you're learning about people, their strengths, their weaknesses, gaps, behaviors as a team, to try and and this is sort of one of the fun things that's probably a thread for me at the moment, is for a lot of the time I've been helping people institute better ways of working and behaving and collaborating and delivering, and now I'm sitting in a place where there's no one else to turn to. Like, if it sucks, it's on me, and it's on us, and it's on so that and that's kind of funny because it ties into my autonomy thing, right? Because last time I scored myself a 6 on autonomy, mainly because we were just under pressure with juggling at home, but I had a lot of autonomy in work, right? Like, I literally could decide, if I don't want to work there, I don't do it. If I don't want to do this, I don't do it. Now I don't have that anymore. Now there's a team that I'm accountable to. So I've gone from like 100% sort of, like living the way and choosing the things I want, to now and loving things. It's like 40% of what I'm doing, I get to really choose, right? And so that's a kind of interesting flip. But so I'm going to still score myself a sort of 6 on that. But I'm doing something I want to do, but I also have to do lots of stuff I don't like doing because it needs to be done.
Oh man, I feel that. Like that was the whole issue for me with scaling the consulting company too. I was like, oh my God, I felt so much pressure, especially with the sales, to like pay people and make sure I can make like all the payroll and stuff. And it is interesting because I had been solo, like you had been too, right? Like for a long time. And then I went into that and I was like, oh my God, it's like you lose a lot of it. But when you're actually building something that you love, which I think, it sounds like you love with this venture thing, it could be so fulfilling, right? It's fun to have a team around you that are all passionate about that too.
Yeah, no, it's spot on, right? And I think that's why the mastery and purpose for me are really high. Like the mastery, I think, it's literally 8s and 9s on both of these probably. Like, I am learning so much about new ventures, everything from raising money to bringing teams together, for getting people to buy into a vision, to getting teams to stand up and go after new ideas that they've never done before. Like, that is one of the sort of things that I had on my list from we spoke in December, was that I wanted to get back to building more things. I was missing that, and I'd sort of played around with a way to sort of do that, either through advising startups or be on boards, and it was a great actually way for me to sort of de-risk this choice I've made now, because I could experience a little bit of what that was like, but not like, it wasn't fully commitment of what I was doing. But this opportunity just literally arrived, and I think that's a friend of mine who works at Apple was introduced me to Mark McNally, who was literally starting the studio in the back of his garage, and from there we've just connected and really aligned on the values of what we think is important to try and go after, and see this sort of opportunity for new company creation with the creator community. Gib, watch out, we're all the tools being so easy for people to build and launch companies now. Like, why not create a place where you can bring all those people together to start building those companies? And that's what we're trying to do. And how are we going to help? Well, I'm just going to keep asking you two great product leaders how to build products better all the time, and see if we can do it. It's going to be fun.
Cool. That sounds great. So you've got, for your mastery and your purpose, you think 9, both of them?
Let's give myself 9. I'm like,
Okay.
I'm in it. I'm living
Sounds
it.
good.
Oh, that's really exciting. I'm really
Yeah.
pleased for you, Barry. That's cool.
Yeah, no,
Very
it's
cool.
been, and Tom's asking this question, he can relate to wanting to build things again, right? You're leading a team, super scaling, you've been in the startup world. Any advice for uncovering next steps? Honestly, like, I'm not going to lie, these kind of conversations with Gib and Melissa, sometimes it's just like people notice you saying things that you can't hear yourself, right?
Yeah.
And like, that's why I love doing these sorts of things, is because I'm sort of talking and then I'm listening to myself going, hang on a sec, did I just say I wanted to build more things? Actually, that's what I wanted to do, you know? And that was, again, one of my takeaways from our last call, is like to do more building. And you know, I could never anticipated I'd be in the situation I'm in now 6 months later, where I'm literally like turning down consulting to like, maybe I'll do a few talks and I'll coach 1 or 2 people, but I'm going to put like 70-80% of all my energy into, and a startup requires that, right? Like, it probably requires more. And so that's a really, I never would have anticipated that shift 6 months ago, but here we are, you know. And if it flames out, you know what? I've already learned a bunch. If it takes off, well, I'm probably fine doing something that brings the best of my coaching, my mentoring, my ability to love building things, and, you know, creating a place where I can bring lots of people who want to go do that. Like, that hits all those notes of purpose, mastery, autonomy. So yeah, just keep tuned. We're doing a crowdfunding in a month, so, you know, you can even take out your credit cards and get involved and have a piece of the action, baby. So yeah, it should be fun.
Yeah, that sounds cool.
Right, well, we
I see.
lots of 15 minutes or so left to answer some more questions, right? And it's always good to sort of dive into a few here. So folks, don't throw them in, but what about for you two and Tom's question about uncovering next steps for yourselves? So
next steps for myself. I think this kind of goes to, I was looking at, there's another question I'm going to answer after this one too. Next steps for myself. I have been, one of the things that you were saying, Barry, I think kind of resonates with me too. Like, I wanted to build things again, right? Like, we're talking about building things again. And this is kind of why I was like getting away from consulting this last year too, because it's like everything else that I do, it's building up something, right? Like something that is like an asset that we have that we can go do, right? And it's that scalable part, right? So Gib talks about it with leverage, you talk about it with building. Like, to me, that's how I kind of look at the focus. The only thing I don't do, I guess, with that is kind of the Harvard stuff, since it's more like teaching, but it's not mine. I just come and teach a class. But I like that because it gives me other opportunities or other connections that I otherwise wouldn't get, right? So it's more of a community aspect for that. Plus, I feel like maybe I can have an impact on some of the MBA curriculum, and that could have an impact on the future leaders of businesses. And that's how I completely look at that. But I think when I think about like any advice on uncovering next steps, Tom, I guess my advice on that is think about like what you're really good at. And this was something that I was thinking about with the consulting. Like I said, I literally made a list and I looked at all the things I had to do every day, all this admin work, all the sales work. And I said, 10% of my time is spent on actually product stuff. And then I said, what am I good at? And I was like, I'm good at sales, but what gives me energy? And I was like, sales does not give me energy. Sales makes me want to go and sit in a closet at the end of the day and not talk to anybody, because I am a massive introvert. And I think some of that like made me more introverted. I think I swing between the two, but doing that work that didn't give me energy made me way more introverted, which took me away from the things I loved. And that's how I think you think about like next steps is, what am I good at, right? Like, what's my risk profile? I think to go out on your own, I get questions about this a lot. You have to have a really high risk profile. Like I did a lot of random stuff the first couple of years I was freelancing, consulting, and I was doing it to pay the bills. Like you have to be comfortable with like not knowing where it's going to go for a little bit, but also trying to learn and figure out like what's going to set me up well. And a lot of my things that I ended up doing, like I built Product Institute because I got tired of flying all over the world and doing a 4-day class. So it was less about like a monetization strategy, more about I literally was like, nah, I really don't want to go there. Like here's a class online. And then it ended up being like it ended up being great because it was scalable. And then I was like, oh, I love building this. I love doing the videos. I love making them funny, and people really liked it. So that's how I kind of think about it. Like if you're going to start or embark on like doing stuff yourself, kind of like we have, my advice is like, think about what you're really good at. Think about if you do want to do things by yourself. I met a lot of people who want to go out on their own, but they don't actually want to do all the hustle. And that's totally fine, right? Like this might not be for you then. And there's some days where I really don't want to hustle, but like you have to like keep going. Like you have to keep motivating yourself to do those things. And there's some people who are like, I'm just not good at that. And that's totally fine as well. But there's other ways to like do stuff and share your knowledge. Writing, everybody can blog, right? Like I like, John Cutler is a great example of somebody who works for Amplitude, but has a phenomenal presence, could go out on his own any day he wants to, but he's like, I like working for Amplitude. So like, there's all these different models out there. I'd say like, when you're thinking about what you want to do with yourself, don't think there's just one, right? Like there's a lot of people doing really cool stuff all over the place. But if you're thinking about, I guess like, yeah, anyway.
Oh, great.
Can I give some, for Tom? Yeah. Tom already picked this up. Like freaking create a list of potential peers that you can have a conversation like this with. And that's freaking easy. The second is create a list of potential mentors that have a big presence, they can help you to see around corners. They're probably 5 or 10 years ahead on the stuff that you're doing at least. And create a list of 10 of those, because you're only going to get 1 or 2 of them. And then just figure out how to reel them in, and do not ask them to be your mentor. Just that's not how you start. You try to find some way to give value to that person. Because here's the challenge. I actually went on LinkedIn to try to find your profile, to try to have some more context. I couldn't find you. But the challenge is it's really hard to give advice to people that you don't really know, which is why I'm always landing at go out and frickin' build your personal board of directors with peers and mentors, because they can get to know you, they care about you, and they start giving you fundamentally better advice. My empty head advice, it sounds like you've gone from startup where you're hands-on to a bigger company, you're scaling. The building is different. You go from building a product to building an organization, and building teams, and building a company, and then building an industry. So it's just a different kind of flavor of building.
Yeah, I'd also add to that. Like I teach this in my CPO accelerator class. There's actually like, I think of 3 types of product leaders. Like you've got your startup leaders, and you have to be really good with ambiguity. It's all about experimentation and building, and like you're in it and you're actually doing it. And then when you start switching to scaling, you are not hands-on anymore. Like you're not actually building that product anymore. Your team is. So now, like Gib said, you're building the team. So I look at it as like, and this is not a hard and fast rule, but like you got your startup VPs, you got your growth stage CPOs who are like leading a massive team around things. And then your enterprise people are a lot more about politics and governance. But I have worked with a lot of product leaders over the past who were like, oh, I never thought about it that way. I might be more of a startup person instead of a scaling person. And it might be time for me to hand over the scaling to somebody else, because I really love and I get a lot of energy over starting things. And I've known a lot of people who've tried to scale those companies up to IPO, or they get far and they're like, you know what, no, I'm going to go back to a smaller team and going back to building something. And they just are so much happier because that's like where they thrive. So it's something to think about too. Yeah. Barry, what do you think?
Hey, Barry, you want to take a shot at Duncan's question?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, to any of you, if your work is successful, what impact do you hope to have? So I've got a pretty clear mission at the moment with the Nobody Studios, right? It's like 100 compelling companies in the next 5 years. So that's like identifying pre-seed stage business ideas and getting them, testing them and seeing, de-risking them, that they could get to a Series A round of funding and ready to scale, right? That's an easy way to sort of like operationally, that's a KPI in a way, but like why? Well, there's nearly 8 billion people on this planet. I think the ability and the tooling and the technology, we've never been more connected. It's never been easier for someone to have an idea, and spin up an instance on some no-code platform and bring their idea to life and start a business. And to me, that is the most exciting thing in the world, to have potentially 8 billion entrepreneurs, you know, who can go after their ideas. And that's really what I want to, you know, if at the moment, if that was something that was maybe a legacy of what the studio helped to ignite, was this ability to bring talent, people's influence and capital together to like build these companies and plot the future of company creation. That's the mission for at the moment. And you know, you'll see, because we're going to be pretty transparent, every mistake and failure, you're going to see it. So I think just follow Nobody Studios and enjoy what the mistakes we make, and hopefully some of the lessons we learn along the way. I think it's going to be quite fascinating.
My answer to
that, I'm always curious.
My answer to Duncan's question is pretty simple, which is I'm a teacher. I am not a consultant, and there's a big difference. Consultants use tools, models, and frameworks, but they're not transparent about them, okay? Because they want you to hire them. Teachers say, here are the tools, models, and frameworks, use them, put them to use. And so for me, it's when people say, hey, Gib, thanks a ton. I just got this freaking awesome job, or I just had a wonderfully successful launch, or I just took a company public, and I don't know them, okay? So that's it, but they're playing back some language or some theories, you know, whether it's delighting customers in hard to copy, margin enhancing ways, or whatever my quirkisms are. So that's when I feel successful. That's real leverage. And that's really what I'm trying to do.
This is a great question, because I think we've all sort of danced around it in a little bit of our own versions of it from Trent, right? So maybe we'll take this question, and then if folks rush, you might get another question in, but I think this is a really interesting one for everyone to answer. How do you develop a strong nose for which activities will have the highest leverage, as opposed to activities that are just neutral or have no leverages? But before we answer, Gib, I need you to turn on your mic.
Oh, yeah. You want me to do the pitch? Okay, cool. If you can also drop the link into the chat, that would be awesome. So Barry's busting on me. Duncan is out there. He knows me. So we'd love your feedback. And so if you hold up your phone to that QR code as though you're taking a photo of it using your camera app, a magical SurveyMonkey link will pop up with a couple of questions. It would be incredibly helpful to me and Barry and Melissa to have your feedback. Usually it's scale 0 to 10, where 0 sucks, 10 is great, and some ideas about how could we make it better. So anyways, and you guys all know this is free. This is your payment, you know, the feedback. Barry and I did this 6 months ago as a total freaking hack. You know, I didn't even pull out my good microphone. So anyways, we've been having fun with it, and we just want to know what you think. Okay, so that's the nice ask for feedback. Do you want me to go on to the Trent question, Barry?
Yes, please. Let's hear it. I'm really curious.
Okay, yeah, so I thought that was a great and very insightful question. It's how do you develop a strong nose for which activities will be highest leverage as opposed to activities that are more neutral or no leverage? Okay, so here's my thing. I think careers are just like building a product, and I think you have to try a lot of stuff to see what works, okay? But over time, you build up your judgment. So for me personally, I am quite motivated by this concept of mastery, of learning new skills. I love creating and building new stuff. So I make conscious choices about the things that I will build. And in the last 5 years, they've been talks, exec events, workshops, Medium essays, and then I switched to a product newsletter on Substack called Ask Gib. Honestly, I think my intuition's pretty good after 30 years. I was unburdened by having to pay college bills and stuff. I've already paid for all that stuff. My first year, I did 100 talks, 100 free talks. And that's when I just realized I loved doing that. You didn't have to pay me for that. And so I just kind of followed the stuff that really excited me and gave me energy. I was going to say that my biggest failure was my Teachable course, but guess what? You know, a year later, it's now working, which is really a testament to patience and having time. And I'm not very good at saying no either. I mean, Melissa and I share that problem, but I am so firm in all the life stuff I have to do that I don't have enough time to do everything that people want me to do. So I just basically only make half of my schedule accessible. So I do end up saying no a lot. So anyways, a great question. Follow your energy and treat all these activities as experiments. And over time, you'll learn what experiments work best for you in a leveraged way.
Yeah, great. Melissa, what about you?
Yeah, I agree with Gib on the, like, a lot of this is trial and error. Now I think about leverage from a perspective of like, what's going to fuel my business models in the right way, and help pay that off. So, you know, and how many people am I impacting? A lot of that goes into that too. I will say too, when you look at this, it's not a linear thing. Like, I consulted for so long because I was learning a ton of stuff when I got deep in with these companies. And now I feel like, oh my God, I've learned so many things and a lot of really new things over the last 4 years since the book came out. Let's put it that way. Since I finished writing the book, let's put it more like that. And now I've got so much stuff that I'm like, okay, I can use this to help teach more. So when you think about leverage, I don't think it's a hard and fast rule that you have to do everything that has incredibly high leverage all the time. I think I'm at this point after a couple of years now where I'm like, okay, I saturated my brain. Now I got to get my brain out to help teach people and then help them put that into practice. So I think there's ebbs and flows to leverage, right? Like, I think you need to do things that don't scale early on to master things. And then when you do feel like you finally have mastery on it, then you think about leverage to actually scale it if you want to bring it to the world, right? Like, that's how I kind of think of my personal model with teaching, like Gib does teaching as well. So I'm trying to do things now that I have all this stuff in my brain. I'm trying to, one, find some brain space to like digest that. And then two, how do I bring that in an accessible way back to like the various platforms that I teach on so that people can then use that and then go make a difference. That's how I kind of think about the leverage. But I think for developing it, know that it's not all about leverage all the time. Like, it can't be. You have to go deep. And I've had like some people come up to me and be like, well, you're a consultant. You never really did this in person. And I'm like, I did though. Like that's what we did with consulting. Like, I led the teams, like I did the change. But now that you did go deep, now it's time to go teach, right? There's a difference between those things. So I guess, I go with that. What do you think, Barry?
No, I love it. You know, I think it's a perfect bridge. Like, I think one of the things about starting the venture studio is I feel like it's putting all of the things I've done over the last whatever many years in a place where they're focused, whether it's coaching teams, whether it's building products, where it's mentoring, teaching, and all that energy is being put into companies. And, you know, if we do that well, you know, like something is created from all of that knowledge or insight or lessons learned or failures, and hopefully something really positive pops out of the studio as a result. So I feel like I found like the vehicle to hopefully do like the best work of my life and create something as a result. So yeah, great question. Great, always hanging out with you two and debating some of these things. Maybe we'll all see each other again in December and see what we're doing with our lives then. It's super fun. Do give feedback, folks. Yeah, go ahead, Gib.
I just want to bring it home. So Barry and Melissa and I have had a conversation on a scale of 0 to 10, where 0 sucks and 10 is awesome. What's your current job stat? That begins great conversations with both peers and mentors. And then we try to reinforce the camp model. I mean, we talk about this stuff all the time with anybody who will listen. Tomorrow, start building your personal board of directors if you don't have one already. So create a list of 5 mentors or 10 mentors with the hope you'll get 1 or 2, and then create a list of 5 peers who are freaking easy to find, because this tool called LinkedIn helps you connect with all your past colleagues. So make that happen tomorrow. Tell them, man, when we come back in 6 months, the first question we're going to ask you is, how's your personal board of directors?
Great. You two look after yourselves. I appreciate you so much. Thanks everybody for the questions. We will see you again in December. All right, take it easy.
Thanks all.
Bye.